Very good afternoon to you, BUSISIWE. Thank you so much for joining us. What are some of the points that stood out for you as Terra Lekota launched the party manifesto?
Very good afternoon, Simpiwe. Yes, we are coming to you from East London, the Orient Theatre, where Co-President BUSISIWE Jemsana has just delivered the election manifesto of COPE to crowds, members of COPE who packed the Orient Theatre hall, waiting to hear the direction in which the party is going to take policy direction and policy stand of the party going to the national elections on the 8th of May, and the direction the party will take in terms of its plans to implement these policies and dealing with the challenges that are facing South Africa, from unemployment, youth unemployment, crime, and all those that seem to be burning issues in the country. But now I'm joined by a political analyst from the University of Fort Hare, Dr. Luvuyo Dondolo, to analyze the speech of COPE President. Doc, thank you so much for your time. Let's first get your overall impression of the speeches delivered by COPE President.
Okay, thank you. I think it was a sound speech, but there are certain areas where maybe the COPE is not clear or is following in a trap of repeating in a different way what the ANC is saying. And also they still position themselves as a constitutionalist, holding the rule of law. And also you look at how when they talk about education and unemployment, I think they didn't go in details, or their manifesto doesn't go in details and talk about education. Because you talk about education, you must have a long-term vision. You identify areas and sectors that you want to specialize, and your education be linked to that. The issue of free education is fine, but you need to view that in the broader context of transformation in the heritage, rather in education sector. So there's those areas, and also the concept of South Africanness. I think it was too abstract. It does not take into account the historical perspective or historical context. And same as the discourse between the property rights and the land ownership. I think there are historical facts that we need to take into account. And I think the problem of COPE of moving or leaning towards the property rights only will alienate other people or potential voters, because this is a sensitive issue. And their struggle in South Africa was based on land, in any other country was based on land. And the national revolution will not be complete without the land issue. So they need to strike a balance when they talk about the property rights and the land issue. And for me, I think they lean towards the property rights, which in a way will alienate some of the potential voters. And same as the issue of unemployment. Sometimes when people talk about the unemployment, they focus on poverty alleviation than economic development. We need to first have a clear direction as far as economic development. All other aspects are byproducts. If we have a clear policy direction in as far as our economy, people will get jobs, but jobs should be linked to the skills and education with a long vision that I highlighted, which seems not to be clear from the COPE at the moment.
And let's first focus on you saying they are still clinging on being constitutionalists and the rule of law. Isn't this the crucial time, looking at the commissions that are doing rounds and the reports that we've been having leaders implicated in corruption, corrupt activities? Wouldn't be this, though, an ideal time for a party that is coming out strongly to say we are going to hold people to account?
Yes, it is a good posture, but I still believe they can do more than that. Yes, constitutionality will always be relevant, because there will always be people who will act against that. But I think they also need to redefine themselves to appeal to different sectors of the population. There are issues that are pressing, which I think they're not coming strongly from their manifesto. And also they spoke about, the President highlighted the issue of corruption and all that. And the phrase that he emphasizes people's power. But there's a discourse when talking about the people's power, which I think sometimes the struggle, we don't seem to take into account the power relations. So the constitutionality will be relevant, but I think they still to define themselves broader than that. And also for the younger voters, some of the issues might not appeal to them or also to the unemployed, because constitutionality is fine, but people want bread and food at the moment. So I think they need to go beyond that posture of being a constitutionalist. As I said, of course, there will always be those issues, but you cannot only cling on the issues of constitutionality without considering other aspects in a comprehensive way. And for me, at the moment, they are not approaching that holistically and also in a comprehensive manner.
And you're saying that people need bread now, and he touched on the issue of jobs, saying that they will give jobs to people to sweep floors, as dolopini. They will not get their grants while sitting at home. They will make sure that people get jobs. Do you feel, when you zoom in, that it spoke to the high unemployment rate that the country is dealing with? Unemployed graduates, those who are sitting at home, who are not graduates, just the whole scope of the unemployed in the country?
Yes, it does, but it also fell short, because if you're talking about people cleaning the street, that's a short term. We need to have a long-term plan. A long-term plan is linked to education and skills and the long vision. The EPWP, for me, what you were saying was more of EPWP. And EPWP is those kind of programs are more of a short term. And people will go back to the cycle of poverty and unemployment. So they need to think broader than that and come up with a plan that will ensure that there's skills transfer and there's education and the long vision. And I emphasize, because as a country, we don't have a long vision where all of us will move towards that. 2030 vision was an attempt, but it's not implemented, or there are challenges when it comes to that. So I think all what the president said, it goes back to what I mentioned. Those are poverty alleviation than sustainable job employment. So we need to move towards better jobs and also economic development, which will absorb a high number of people with skills and also semi-skilled laborers.
Lastly, Doc, the issue of land, you've touched on it a bit. When he made his opening address, he touched on the issue of land. Again, during his speech, he touched strongly on the issue of land, quoting the Constitution, saying that the Mandelas of the day, your Governor Mbeki, fought for all South Africans to enjoy the same benefits in the country. Is his stand, as he continues to stand by those words, likely to encourage or attract more voters into the party? Is the vision, as per the Constitution, really what is detailed in the Constitution?
I think the COPE stance is not clear, and perhaps there are misunderstanding, or the public receives that in a different light. So they will need to explain what they mean and the balance between the property rights and the land issue. For me, what the ordinary people are getting is the view that COPE is against land. And if the general public have that perception, indirectly so, they will alienate other potential voters. So they need to be clear and precise. What do they mean? And also come up with the plans of land redistribution, because you cannot talk about the land redistribution without taking into account the history, the historical past of this country. So in addressing the present, the past will help us to address some of the issues. And as I said, the challenge for them, for me, it appears is to balance the property rights and also the demand from the ordinary people or South Africans about land issue. And also the South Africanness that he promoted, co-position themselves as people who are more of South Africanness. And I think that is good, but it also has its own shortfalls. You cannot have a South Africanness or permanent reconciliation without social and historical injustice. So we need to first address social and economic justice. Then you can talk about sustainable reconciliation, can talk about sustainable South Africanness. At the moment, that is lacking. And what they are promoting, unfortunately, I don't think most people will receive it in good faith, because they will say there are still social and historical and economical imbalances that they are experiencing at the moment. And in the main, for me, I think the land issue, the stance on the land issue is not clear. And that has a potential of alienating other people. Of course, it will attract others. There are other South Africans who identify themselves with what COPE is preaching. But it's generally, I think the approach they are taking to communicate that it creates more problems than clarifying their stand to the people out there.
And speaking of imbalances, the issue of quotas, COPE President Mosiuwa Lekota mentioned that, in fact, said we should do away with quotas and look at South Africans in terms of their skill and their talent.
You see, I laughed actually because whenever I was growing up, I played rugby. And when I was playing rugby, I was always put under development. You were never taken to a full squad. You will be developed no matter how good you are. So we also need to take into account the history of sport in South Africa. In the 1980s, there was a view that you can't play normal sport in an abnormal society. And I think we need to level the playing fields. We cannot turn a blind eye and treat that people are treated equal or in terms of the facilities and the opportunities. There's still an element of race when it comes to sport. So facilities must be provided at an early age and stop the idea of always putting black players under development, specifically in rugby and cricket. I have a personal experience in those codes. And same as in other aspects, but I think if you're talking about doing away with the quotas, we won't be solving the problem. Because there are good players, black players, who have skills, but they're always put under development. They will go all the way up to under 21, but they won't proceed to a national squad. And same as at a club level, at the provincial level. So the issues of transformation is also start at a club level, school level, and the provincial, because those fit to a national squad. So I think even then, we need to take into account the historical context and see how can we close the gap. And also emphasize the issue of skills and potential for everyone, to ensure that the young players that are promising are given equal opportunity, but without turning a blind eye on the past or on what happened in the past.
Doc, thank you so much for your analysis. Dr. Luvuyo Dondolo, political analyst from the University of Fort Hare, analyzing the speech or the manifesto election launched by President Mosiuwa Lekota of COPE. But right now I'm joined by the COPE's president, Mr. Lekota himself, to go into detail on his speech. Thank you so much for joining us. Political analyst saying there, without addressing the historical imbalance, you can't then speak of South Africanism in the issue of land. Is there a plan of COPE to deal with the historical imbalance in terms of the land issue when dealing with it?
The Constitution has got a very comprehensive approach to the question of land redistribution. In the first place, we cannot keep communities apart and then say we will then redistribute land. It's almost like you're going to take land here and take it there. Built into the Constitution is the question of redistribution, restitution, security of tenure, and redistribution, simply straightforward, where you have a lot of land that is laying fallow today, is not being used by anybody. You must link that to people who want what land. If there's anybody who wants land for housing, Section 26 tells you that everybody has the right to access for adequate housing. Now, anybody who wants housing can come to me. I'll look around. If there's no land in the hands of the government, we identify land, we expropriate it, the Constitution makes provision for that, and we make that land available to them. If there are people who want land for, say, farming, Section 25 on this issue of expropriating for public interest covers that. What do you want land for? If you want to work the land, you want to plow or whatever else you want to do, we check whether you have that know-how, and we make the land available to you. It's provided for in Section 25. If you want land and you don't have the know-how, we must check whether you have the know-how. If you want to do that, we must check that. If you don't have the know-how, Section 29 empowers us to take you for training. Section 29 says you are entitled to basic education, including adult basic education. There's no one who's not provided for in the Constitution. We can deal with all of that. The problem is that the African National Congress, as a government, just did not pay attention to these sections of the Constitution. It has not asked people who wants land in order to farm. Do they have education? Instead, they closed the technical colleges for training. But land, you have all of that. Now, if you don't train the people, because we must remember those of our people who lost land, they didn't only lose land, they also lost the knowledge how to work the land. And the other thing is that you can only give land to people who really want to work it. We can't give you land and then you leave it there, or you just go and sell it and so on. We're not going to do that. The Constitution is looking, because land is a limited asset. So what you do, you make it available to those who want to work it. And my sister, working the land is not an easy thing. You ask me, I grew up in the countryside. It's not easy, it's very difficult. So there is nothing whatsoever in the Constitution that does not make for that. Restitution is where people had lost their land and they can show evidence. Security of tenure is many of our people, I mean people that live in Tanzania and all of those people don't have title. Then it means they don't have security of tenure and they can't bequeath those houses to their children and so on. Give them title deed. We'll give them title deed. So then they can own that. They can expand it. They can do that. There is simply no problem whatsoever with regard to this question of land. But I think Mr. Ramaphosa does not understand the Constitution. I must just say this said. He doesn't understand it, so he doesn't know what he's doing. If the moment you amend that section of the Constitution and you say you are going to empower yourself to take property from others, then the Bill of Rights is gone. Because it can't be that you can take from me land I bought with my money or my grandfather bought with his money, and then you say you're going to give somebody else. You're not going to get right. Otherwise we go back to war and then people are going to die for nothing.
Certainly an ongoing debate, but let's come to jobs. You spoke about jobs, giving people jobs and people not getting grants whilst they're just sitting at home. They would have to earn their grants. And currently there's child grant and there's old age grant. And there's then the missing middle, the unemployed young people. Who were you referring to as to those who will not be getting their grants or sitting at home, that will open up jobs for them so that they can sweep the streets?
You know, my sister, let me tell you this. This country is the first country I know of where young girls of 13 and 14 are turned into pensioners. They have not even worked. They must earn grants. What kind of nation is that? What are you building? In all countries that I know of, you give these kind of things, grants and all, to people who have worked, who may have been crippled maybe as a result of something and so on. But you can't have a whole generation of children just getting pregnant and then you give them grants. They can't even complete their education. There are problems at the early age of 14, 15, of 18, and there will be problems for life. Can't work. Life is not working like that. You need to be able to grow your young people, put them in schools. Don't give them grants to sit home, not even going to school now, because now they are these young pensioners like that. Secondly, you must create jobs. You can't come with these threats to a modern economy like this. You threaten to take properties of people and so on and so on. So what do you think you are doing? The people that need jobs, the people that have money take their money elsewhere. Your people who need jobs are sitting unemployed because you are taking a foolish position of threatening the investors. They go away with their money, and when it is away, you don't have jobs. So now these other men are sitting at home without work. We are going to make sure that this Constitution, you know this Constitution, we discussed this Constitution years and years in jail with the other leaders who are dead now. That's not the way you are going to run society. You must make sure that the economy, you are inheriting a running big economy. Keep it running. In fact, increase its speed so that this economy can absorb, therefore, the present unemployed, including the young unemployed.
And how do you increase the economy, especially now, the tough times where we are talking about an economy that is not growing, oceans economy, firms, factories? How do you increase the economy to accommodate the unemployed, not only the poorest of the poor, but the unemployed graduates who have been to school, who have graduated?
You cannot increase it by getting rid of your most trained and expert layers of labor. This thing of black economic empowerment, compelling some of the businesses to close down, making some of the technical people leave this country and go away, you shrink the economy. They should never have started there, because that is discrimination that now has shrunk the economy. You look at the numbers of South Africans who are abroad now, with their expertise and everything. And that's something that we discussed in jail. President Mandela, among others, was saying to us, want to say to us in jail, you must not worry about these white people that are trained. They are your labor. Apartheid is investing in your citizens who will help you tomorrow to run this economy and even expand it. Now they come with this thing. And then, first of all, this so-called black economic empowerment. You can't get rich by taking somebody whose rich's property. I don't want somebody's that thing. I want an opportunity to build my own. And I want our people to be given opportunity to get education, to train themselves, to build their own wealth and so on. You know, if you don't know how to make money, you'll never look after money. You can never look after money if you don't know how to make money. So we must get our people to get the necessary education and training, generate their own money, open their own businesses, forget about Pick and Pay and all that kind of thing. Leave it to that family, build your own Pick and Pay. Then you expand the economy. So now there is Lekota and family with a business. Instead of struggling for fighting Mr. Ackerman for his business and so on. Now, how many businesses have we blacks created since we came to power? Nothing. It's 20 years now, hardly anything you can talk about. All of these guys that are supposed to be rich is people that have been taking other white people's money and so on the basis of black economic empowerment. Where is the new businesses? They will not be there if you don't train blacks, you don't educate them and give them opportunity to build new businesses. Then the economy increases. Then you employ more people. We will not go this route of this black economy. And this thing is apartheid in reverse. I don't know why people can see that. Once you say it's affirmative action, my child must get a job ahead of his child because my child is darkish in complexion. That is nothing but job reservation of apartheid, man. We grew up under apartheid. We know how that whole thing worked. And it could work for the Afrikaners under that time because they were the minority. We are not the minority, we are the majority. We need a bigger economy. And the only way you create it is to educate and train your own sons and daughters and let them run into the... We could even have done something. We could have said to these white businesses under apartheid, they could be asked, and they were asked, to pay a certain extra tax because the government said we are protecting your businesses. What did the ANC do when we came to power now? We now did not. We cut tax on business. We cut it down instead of saying no, retain it. And then let's use this to finance education so that all these black children can go into schools, and then this money that was used to defend apartheid must now be kept, this tax, just for a few more years, and get these blacks educated, trained, and then you get them and get them and get them. And as you slowly reduce it. And then you move towards it. No, they didn't do that. And then whatever money there is. That's why you see now Cyril now and all these other guys. Oh, a chap sleep a pauper, wake up and be a billionaire. It's all this money.
You also spoke about giving free electricity to the people. And it is such an interesting time when we are dealing or talking about an ESCOM that needs to be dismantled, that is struggling financially. What's COPE stand on that and its plans to save?
I'm sorry, my sister, but you know, all this electricity from coal is old science. It's old. It's left its time, and this ESCOM thing will not be revived. I don't care who says what. We don't have money to do anything about that. They must be allowed to go. Let's move in the new direction. The whole universe is. There's electricity in the sun. There's electricity in the water. There's electricity in the wind. Technologies are moving in that way. Why do we want to go backward? Just because somebody who's the president has got shares in this and the other one has got shares in that. No, we don't need those. We are going into the future now. These young people, they must now get ready to live in newer conditions. They must be starting businesses in which they can generate electricity from there. And it's ample, it's free. Maybe you don't. Maybe you believe in God like me. So God gave it for us free. And now we know it's there.
Mr. Lekota, we can go on and on to get your stand on the healthcare, economy, crime, municipalities. But unfortunately, because of time, we are going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, COPE President Musiwale Jemsana.